Hey guys, it's me, Fusion What Ifs, and today we're doing What If Deku was Notch's reincarnation. Yes, I know that's not how you say his name, but I lack the ability to like pronounce it. Dang, why am I stuttering? So, yeah, I'm not sure whether Notch is gonna go out before What If Deku learned had Mercury manipulation, or after Deku had Mercury manipulation. I'm not really sure. It's most likely gonna come out after since I made the Mercury one first, but it's really debatable. Anyways, if you guys ended up seeing that one first, you guys would know that surprise, surprise, I'm gonna be back after I just had like a lot of tests from the last few weeks. Anyways, sorry I've been off. I explained that in my last video at the very start of like Mercury Deku. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys don't know who Notch is, come on now. He's the vice captain of the Black Bulls and one of the strongest shadow magic users. Period. Anyways, he's a really cool character I wanted to do, and I decided, hey, why not do him? So pretty much, I hope you guys enjoy. And without further ado, play my intro. Now let's get straight into it. So pretty much, I'm gonna start this off a bit different than how I usually start off most what ifs, right? In this one, Izuku's actually gonna be born, but this time with a twin. Pretty much, his twin is gonna have blonde hair and green eyes, while he himself has pure black hair and green eyes. They would still end up being the kids of Hisashi Midoriya and Inko Midoriya, but their family would be a bit different. They would end up living, I would say off the coast of the city, pretty far away from everyone else really. But they still end up going to school via bus, which would end up taking a long time, but yes, they still end up going to school. And all of that, right? When they both turned 4, they figured out that they figured out their quirks. Pretty much, Izuku would have this shadow manipulation quirk, right? He would be able to restrain people using shadows and travel using shadows, while his brother would end up having a more offensive-oriented quirk, which would actually use light. This being able to create light swords and whips, and even fly using these light wings and all of that, right? Pretty much they would have a pretty good friendship, but Izuku would be more rebellious in this one, and as such, when he ends up going to school, he would befriend Bakugo pretty easily because of their personalities at first. From there, him and Bakugo would proceed to pretty much rule the school in a sense, right? While also being pretty mean to everyone else, right? They won't commit any crimes, but they're pretty mean to pretty much anyone else, except for Izuku's brother, who he ended up not being mean to, because one, that's his twin, and two, even though he was a mean one, his brother seemed to be the total opposite of him, being very kind and bright, almost like his quirk. So pretty much, since they're 4 right now, we're gonna skip a few years. We're gonna skip 6 years into the future, right? A 6-year time skip, and this is when Izuku's parents would start to explain to them their family business. Well, not family business, but their family tradition, right? Pretty much, to say the least, Inko would come from this family, right? They would be called the Faust, and they would have similar quirks, right? It would be this type of quirk that passes down from like generation, sort of like One for All, but not willingly, right? So pretty much, his mom would have a pretty powerful quirk in the sense that she's able to summon any being regardless of the nature. So that means it can either be super good or super bad. And after training it for a while, she was able to manipulate it, like sort of like her relatives, right? And pretty much they'll use this to summon devils. And this is how they would gain powers. At first, Hisashi would have only been able to shoot fire out of his mouth, but after taming a devil himself, he'd be able to give his magic the attribute to poison too, which he would end up changing his quirk and saying that it just evolved, right? So when they figured out that Izuku had shadow magic, which was pretty versatile by itself, thinking he's also pretty strong too. So they decided to let him on the family business. And from here, Izuku would do amazing, right? The first demon he would subject would be Grimadello, is what his name. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but Grimadello. And pretty much it would be this dog type devil, right? Even though it would take him a long while, he'd pretty much completely defeated and gain this master servant relationship with it, right? And from there, using Grimadello, he'd end up getting 3 other devils, this being Slatos, Plymedy, and Wagner, yeah, Wagner or something like that. Pretty much being, I'm pretty sure, sort of like a cow, a cat, and what seems to be a bird, I'm guessing. But anyways, I'm getting a bit off track. This is when, after doing this in quick succession, his parents would think he's ready. After this, he would hand them a bracelet connected to one of the strongest devils to ever live. This being Lucifugus, one of the highest ranking devils to ever exist. Izuku, who had pretty much been on adrenaline high from being able to collect these devils and get more power, right, would have ended up doing it. But this is when he would figure out, or this is when his brother would try to stop him, right? This being, damn, I didn't give him a name, did I? Fuck. Let's call him Izuna. Yeah, Izuna would try to stop him, right? But Izuku, as I said, was on his adrenaline high, and he loved the feeling of just being able to surpass his limits and all of that. At least that's what him and Bakugo would be talking about, or that would be their motto, surpassing your limits. So pretty much, he would end up summoning it anyways, and you know, his parents would be around too, no worries. And this is when he would summon him, right? Pretty much, Lucifugus would be this being, this tall, slender figure with long, pointed ears, 2 large ox-like horns, and a pair of wings and a long, prehensile tail or something like that. And I'm not sure what else to say besides this guy completely kills them, right? Even though the seal, or how he summoned the demon, was using like pretty much his mom's quirk would let her like pretty much create this sort of summoning circle, and then using her quirk she could activate it, right? And even if she did die, the thing would still stay activated. Pretty much it would then proceed, even while restricted by the circle, it would then proceed to kill Izuku's mother and father. Doing this would cause Izuku to immediately get off his adrenaline high, and he would actually feel sort of scared, because right now, even while using his double union, I'm gonna say he's using it right now, he still wouldn't be able to defeat Lucifugus, right? This is when his brother, you know, he's gonna being the smart one, would eventually ended up using the sort of light mode, right? Think of it as Yuno's spirit whatever, but on a much lower scale and using light magic. Pretty much he would then destroy the bracelet that's linked to Lucifugus and thereby ending the connection. But while doing such, he would get impaled directly through the chest, dying. This is when the sealing would stop. Izuku would come out of the Devil Union mode, and to say the least, he would be scared, he would be sad, he would be ashamed, because of his actions, he got his whole family killed, right? He didn't really care for his mom and his dad, he just wanted, you know, just happy that he made them proud, right? But he really, really loved his brother, right? Because, think about it, right? Like, you love your brother, right? But when you have a twin, it's like another half of you. It's like you're 2 parts of a coin, which they kind of work because of their magics, their personalities, and like everything, right? They're like the perfect tag team, right? It's like losing half of yourself. Now this would hit different in Izuku, right? It would hit different. And Lucifugus, before going, have said a few words, being like, "Ha, you released me." Well, I'm not gonna go under anyone. It sucks, doesn't it? And he proceeds to kill all of them, right? This is when Izuku in his mind would try to figure out why he did it, and then he'd only come to one conclusion: he's evil. He's evil. Like, that's the only reason why. It wasn't for any cause or reason. He just saw people he was able to kill and he did it. Is this what Izuna was talking about? Unjust evil? If so, I hate it. Unjust evil. I'll make sure that this will never happen again. even if it's gods and devils. I won't forgive them. I never will. And this is when Izuku would create his own kind of creed, pretty much, right? From there, he pretty much reported, and everyone would just think, oh, it was this one villain who had the ability to pretty much, who had this ability to create sharp claws and all of that. They wouldn't chalk it up to Izuku because Izuku's quirks couldn't create such divine cuts, and there weren't any use of, or weren't any traces of metal or anything like that. Pretty much just say it's this unidentified villain who might be at large and is now a serial killer because he killed three people, right? So pretty much, this is when Izuku, who'd end up using money that his parents accumulated because his parents would be decently rich, to go all the way to America. And for 5 years, he would be this vigilante. He would go by the name of Nightshade. Yeah, for the sake of this, he'd go by the name of Nightshade. And pretty much he would be this vigilante. They would know he'd be pretty young, but he would get the job done perfectly, right? And during this time, he would have erected his devil union. From this, he would end up buying a plane ticket back and coming back to the good old Japan. Pretty much, to say the least, he would end up, like I said before, mastering his own magic too. And I forgot to mention, they do have grimoires, right? Like the castle where his parents lived and where they lived, they had grimoires. Pretty much, it would have this grimoire section where they would walk in and their quirks would connect to these books. It would be the sort of strange thing, which would only be accustomed to the Fast family, but it would be a pretty cool thing, right? It was pretty much one of the ancestors who would pretty much summon all these books that came from different worlds and connect them to the people who came from the family, you know, the predecessors and ancestors and successors and all of that, right? So pretty much end up coming back because, you know, he can't just leave that all behind. And two, he would end up wanting to become a brother like he promised his brother, right? Because his brother's goal was to become a hero, so now he wants to make his brother proud by doing it for him, because he's not going to be able to do it by himself. Pretty much end up coming back, and he would end up coming back, I would say, 12 months before the UA entrance exam, end up transferring into Aldera High, and this is when he would meet Bakugo again, right? When Bakugo would see Izuku, to say the least, he would be, how would I explain this? He would be somewhat amused. Yeah, that's the word. Amused. He would end up looking at Izuku and end up being like, so the little crybaby came back after sulking, huh? Well, if my parents died, I probably wouldn't care that much. Well, you went all the way across the world. Congratulations. You care. Anyways, it's nice to see you again. This is when he would actually go to give Izuku a high five. But Izuku would end up just ignoring Bakugo and be like, if I ever hear you talk about my family like that again, I promise you, you won't have a hand to give me a high five anymore, and you also won't have a mouth to speak with. You'd end up walking away, and let's just say that it ended up giving Bakugo chills, right? Because how Izuku talked to Bakugo was a bit weird, right? It would be in this pretty much sort of ginger happy, sort of like how Bakugo would talk, right? It would be aggressive, but also amusing. But this Izuku seems much colder in a sense. And as such, he would be kind of scared. He would be surprised at himself for even thinking that. Scared of someone who has shadow magic, who doesn't even seem to be that strong. Because Izuku, who would actually end up restraining, actually end up specializing in restriction magic, wouldn't have actually been too strong back in the time against Bakugo. And Bakugo didn't know about his devils because he didn't use his devils. And as such, he would think, why am I scared of him? He's just some weak punk that got put in this place, right? Pretty much every time skip 2 years. And let's just say Bakugo was not on his high throne anymore. Pretty much, you could have put Bakugo in this place so many times now that his confidence would have gone down a lot, and so would have his arrogance, right? He would have, to put things simply, humbled Bakugo. Now from here, it's the last day of Aldera High. And this is when the teacher, not the last day, but like, I think it's the last day. Anyways, he would end up pretty much, the teacher would end up walking in, right? And he would say, these are career papers, so you guys want to become heroes. He would end up throwing them in the air saying, I know what you guys want to become heroes. I know what you guys want to do for your career. You guys all want to become heroes. That's when they all start using their quirks of two people, this being Bakugo and Izuku. Bakugo would then stand up and then say, hey, teach, don't want to be the best of these nerds. They're gonna be even lucky to become B-lister heroes. This is when everyone starts throwing shade at Bakugo, and this is when someone mentioned, hey, Bakugo, you shouldn't be talking. Izuku's in the room, and sorry, Midoriya's in the room, and this, no, not Midoriya. Actually, yeah, Fast, yeah, let's call him Fast. Fast is in the room. Faust, damn it. Faust is in the room, right? That would end up being Izuku's last name. And this is when Ibaka would end up going silent, right? And you could just see him having them PTSD Vietnam flashbacks, and he would just sit himself down, be quiet, and tuck his head into his arms as he would be this close to tears, right? Just from Izuku's name. And also because Izuku would actually be radiating his magical power, which also end up triggering this PTSD. Which should take 6 months, but for the sake of this being an anime and all of that, I'm gonna say it only took 2 months. So, yeah, pretty much from there, this is when the teacher would say, hey, Izuku, don't you want to go to EUA? This is when everyone would start being like, yeah, you can definitely make it into EUA. Yeah, he's Izuku, come on now. And I'm sorry, he's Faust. Of course you make it in, and all of that, right? He would end up being praised. And Izuku honestly wouldn't take this to heart much. He would just be like, oh, okay. Everyone thinks I could do it. I could probably do it anyways. What they think of me doesn't really matter. This is when you end up going home, and you end up going to the same tunnel this time, and this would end up being the sludge villain, right? Izuku would actually end up being able to sense the sludge villain, and he would have tried. I'm not gonna try his best, but he would have actually just ended up sinking himself into a shadow, and this is when sludge villain would actually be surprised, be like, hey kid, where are you? I need your body. This is when he would then appear behind the sludge villain, and then he would use one of his spells, this being Shadow Restraint. Think of it as Shikamaru's what's it called? Shikamaru's Shadow Binding? Oh, Shadow Possession, yeah. His Shadow Restraint pretty much be Shikamaru's Shadow Bind, Shadow Possession, right? So pretty much he would stick the sludge villain in place, as he would say, hey, what are you doing? This is when the sludge villain would say, you seem to have this amazing quirk too. I might just need your body a bit more now. This is when the sludge villain tried to move, but realized that he would be stuck, and he's like, kid, what did you do to me? This is when Izuku would say, I wonder what to do with you. Don't really have any spells for this, and I don't want to use my double union mode. Who knows, maybe this spell might work. As he would then decide to open his grimoire, and he would proceed to start activating a spell. But before he can, he would feel another presence come up from the sewer, as it would then say, never fear, for I am here. This being All Might, right? All would then look forward, and he would see that sludge villain would already be trapped, and Izuku would have stopped mid-chant from using a spell, right? This is when All Might would say, young citizen, it seems that you are in a bit of a pickle. Let me help you. Detroit Smash! He would then proceed to hit the sludge villain and pretty much splatter him all across the walls, right? This is when Izuku would be like, well, thanks, All Might, as we start walking away, right? This is when All Might would look at Izuku and be like, hey, what's your name? This is when Izuku would say, Faust Izuku. Which is pretty much, Faust being his last name, Izuku being his first name. I just gotta explain that, right? Because people are gonna be like, hey, why is his first name Faust and all that shit? Like, they're gonna say that, I can right feel it. So pretty much he would say, young Faust. Anyways, you did a good job today. But remember, don't use your quirks, but I'll allow it this time. Have a good day. This is when Izuku would end up just walking off as always. And for the next 10 months, he would just end up training, right? Pretty much he would be adding the finishing touches to his double union mode, while also trying to achieve a better double union mode by doing a certain something that I'm not gonna spoil yet because it's in the manga but not in the show. So yeah, but pretty much, to say the least, he would end up pretty much trying to perfect his shadow magic too, because his shadow magic would mainly resort of these restriction moves and all of that and traveling, right? Yeah, I mean, my phone's going off on like a tangent. I'm sorry if you guys hear that, but my phone is like ringing and all of that. But anyways, he would actually end up having mostly restriction moves, right? He would start practicing to get a few attacking moves, and he would get a few. One of them being pretty much shadow tier, which is pretty much how instead of him using shadow hands to restrict someone, he actually uses them to tear it apart. And you'd also end up learning this other one called shadow pummel, I'm pretty sure, which instead of him ripping them apart, he just ends up sending a bunch of hands at them that attacks and deals a lot of blunt force damage. From there, he would pretty much be done, and he'd spend the rest of it just studying, right? Because even though he was in America, the American and the Japanese school systems are very different, and as such, he needs to practice for this and all of that, right? So 10 months pass, he walks into the room. He doesn't bump into a Chaco or Bakugo, but he does end up sitting beside Bakugo during the test. And Bakugo, to say the least, is feeling very anxious. But anyways, Izuku would end up acing the exam with complete ease. Then he would proceed to go on to the practical, right? Professor Mike would be explaining the practical, but this is when a guy with blue hair would stand up and say, "There seems to be a silhouette of a force robot. This is a mistake on your part. I'm severely disappointed." And then he then looked back and he said, "And you," while pointing to Izuku, would then say, "You seem to be bothering that young man beside you," pointing to Bakugo, who would actually end up be kind of shaking, sweating. And he's like, "I suggest you stop." This is when Izuku's like, "I'm not sure what you think I'm doing, but sit down." This is when Izuku would give him that signature glare that Nacht always does. And to say the least, it would strike fear directly into Ida's core, and he would feel this intense fear, right? He doesn't even use a shadow magic, right? He's just pushing this onto him just by his eyes, right? Because whenever Izuku ends up using a shadow magic or his devil union magic, his eyes would actually end up turning, I'm pretty sure it was either like red. Yeah, it was like red. So after using devil union magic for so long, I would say his eyes turned black. So yeah, the pupil of his eyes are, instead of being this light green, right around this very, very dark green. And to say the least, they put fear into Ida, and Ida is now sitting down contemplating life. I'm joking, right? He's just down and he's scared. Pretty much, President would then proceed to thank Izuku, and he would then explain the first silhouette is the 0 pointer and they should not go for it. Pretty much from there, we now have Izuku going out into the field, right? He'll be wearing a tracksuit, this being pretty much, think of Izuku's tracksuit that he wore in canon, except it's open up. The tealish green parts are now pure black, and he would actually have a strap for his grimoire just in case. This is when Ida who would still be afraid, would end up walking up to him saying, "Hey, you shouldn't have any items with you, especially that book and all of that, right?" This is when Izuku would then send this glare towards Ida and say, "This book is part of my quirk, so unless you want an unfair advantage of some sort, I suggest you back off." This is when Ida, who would end up using his smarts this time, would actually just back off. Hold on, get a drink of water. Yeah, pretty much. President Mike would then start opening the gates, and Izuku would immediately rush in, right? Everyone else would be looking confused until President Mike would say, "Hey, follow that black-haired kid. He has the right idea. Heroes don't wait to fight. No, villains don't give countdowns and all that shit. Go, go, go." This is when they would all realize, "Oh shit, this guy now has a head start and all of that," and they start rushing in to get some points. Pretty much, Izuku would be spamming Shadow Tier and Shadow Pummel a lot, and he would get a decent 90 something points, like a decent 96 points, a decent 96 points, because he would be moving pretty fast, because he would end up using reinforcement magic, which, if you guys don't know, is something else he learned, reinforcement magic. So yeah, I'd end up using reinforcement magic, which also make him pretty fast and strong by itself, and he would end up completely destroying robots, getting 96 points. After this, he would feel a bit bad, because he's not going to overwork himself. He's only going to get what he needs to get. So after that, he would just pretty much chill around, walking around, right? But this is when we skip to the observation room, right? And we see a bunch of heroes talking among each other, right? And they're describing students who would probably be good for UA. And they would see Bakugo too, who because Izuku is in there, is pretty confident and arrogant again. And then they would randomly move to Izuku, because as Awa says, "Hey, who's that kid?" This is when he would then say, ah, him. His name is Izuku Faust. His last name sounds a bit German, maybe even English, but yeah. He's apparently fully Japanese, and he seems to have no guardian. Anyways, his quirk is shadow magic, I think. This is when they would all be like, shadow magic? Well, I'm not sure why it's called magic. But anyways, how many points does he have is what Aizawa would ask. And this is when Nezu would look at the board and say, oh, he has 96 points, currently the highest. And everyone would end up being surprised, like 96 points already? It's hardly even started, because like 4 minutes passed, This is when Nezu would start drink his tea, and he says, this is exciting, let's see how he deals with this. We then open up this glass panel and would slam down this red button. And from there we skip back into the arena. We see the ground opening up, and to say the least, it would open up and show this massive robot, this being the zero pointer, right? And this is when everyone started running away. But the zero pointer ended up hitting a building, causing some rubble to fall down and fall onto this girl, this being Ochako Uraraka. This is when Izuku would see this, and at first he'd actually just want to leave her to her own devices, right? But this is when Izuna's words would spout in his mind, right? This being, hey, become the best hero you can. Well, no, it's like, hey, why don't you become a hero with me? We can save everyone we can, and all of that. It's like kid Izuna, like 4 years old Izuna, right? And this is when Izuku's like, oh fuck Izuna, and this is when he would actually end up opening up his grimoire, right? From the mere look at the zero pointer, he realized that it would be pretty strong, so he would decide against his own better wishes, it's best to use this technique. He would then pretty much summon Grimadello in his chibi form, as he would say, hey Grimadello. This is when he would say, yes, Sir Izuku. Like a sounder's voice, like, hey, yes, Sir Izuku. This is when Izuku would say, we're gonna perform a partial transformation pretty soon. Get ready. This is when Grimadello would say, yes, sir. And from there, Izuku would pretty much use his shadow magic to teleport Uraraka from under the rubble all the way to the front of the gate, right? And this is when she'd be confused, and then she would then see Izuku running directly at the zero point, and he's like, hey, you stop! And she would end up screaming that, but Izuku wouldn't just ignore her, right? As he would then say, partial transformation, or partial devil union mode, Canis, or Canis, right? From there, his right hand, or both his hands, would end up turning into these claws, right? These claws that seem to be wrapped around in shadows. And from there, he would end up using Grimadello's, attribute, which would end up being Pack. He would end up summoning five of the clones of himself, and he would attack the zero pointer, right? From pretty much all angles. And the zero pointer would pretty much be destroyed, like as simple as that. They would like cleave through the zero pointer with like complete ease, and it would end up exploding. Pretty much the reason why he only used partial transformation was because Demon Union by itself is too strong for it, and he saw no need to use it. And two, the reason why he summoned 5 clones was because Pact, when using partial demon transformation or partial demon union mode, is not as strong as it would with regular demon union mode, right? But still pretty effective. Anyways, he would just end up closing his grimoire, putting it back into his pouch, and he would proceed to walk off the scene, right? As he's walking off, Ochako would end up thanking him, and he would just nod his head and send this nice eye-closed smile. From there, he ended up going home. 2 weeks have passed, and this is when Izuku would get his net letter, right? This being from All Might, and it would say, ah, young Fast, it's nice to see you coming to UA. For your villain points, you got 96 points. And to say the least, there's another part of this test, this being hero points. And for hero points, you got 60 for saving the girl while also disposing of the zero pointer. I introduce you to your Hero Academia. Enjoy. this is when the thing would go off and, explode. And, it's like a small explosion and all of that. This is when Izuku would just smile at himself and then look at his picture, like a family portrait, right? As he would say, Izuna, I'm one step closer to achieving your dream, our dream. I hope you're doing good in the afterlife. That's pretty much it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. What if Deku was Notch's reincarnation. I hope you enjoy, and it's gonna be part of my reboot and all of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoy. Please like and subscribe. I'm gonna hit 2K before New Year's Eve. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Without further ado, peace out.